got featured in both our series a lot. Was such a gifted communicator and very, very, very practical. It's not sort of pie in the sky stuff. You can tell you've done your hours with your patients and had a lot of success. So just really excited to have you on. But tell us a little bit more about yourself before we dive straight in.
That's really lovely. Thank you. I would love to say I've done quite as much training as the American naturopathic doctors, but I actually haven't. Theirs is really like a medical degree and a naturopathic degree on top. In Australia, there isn't that. So it's a very similar kind of level of training, but theirs is like they have the full medicine kind of degree as well, which I would love to have. So here in Australia, I basically have a Bachelor of Health Science in Naturopathy, which is a 4-year degree. Then I've also got an associate degree of Clinical Sciences and a Master's of Reproductive Medicine, which does come from the medicine faculty. So there's been lots of kind of study there. I have done probably maybe I'm up to maybe 15 years now of clinical practice. So I see about kind of maybe 35, 40 clients a week or patients a week. I mostly deal with, women's health, reproductive hormones, fertility, but then obviously lots of the general naturopathic stuff as well is probably still half of my practice. So things like mood, depression, gut, food, immune, babies, families, there's a huge kind of variety of kind of stuff there. So I do really love it. I've got a book called Healthy Hormones, which is aimed for the premenopausal people. I've got a menopause course coming out next month, which is for everybody else. So I've covered most women there. And if anyone is interested in hormones, I've got a Facebook group called Healthy Hormones with Belinda Kirkpatrick that you're all welcome to join. And we talk about all different sorts of things that aren't just kind of hormones as well.
So good. So good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Belinda. We as Matt said before, we always love our chats. Always, you have such great feedback and you always make us laugh. So that is a double win for us. So let's jump into the questions. This first one comes from Elaine. She says, I have had candida problems for so many years. I don't even know when they started. Probably first recognized when I had my second child in 1984. I'm 58 years old. I have to be really careful with sugar intake, even fruits, although I do eat some. Or I will have bothering signs such as the burning sensation in my private area and sometimes my hands and my feet. Any thoughts?
Oh, this systemic candida is so kind of rampant and really is such a hard thing to shift. Those dietary changes that you're making are great. I am a fan of you having a little bit of fruit in there because they are also so restrictive that if you've been doing them, did you say it's been for a long time since the second child? How long did you say? Like 10 years or something?
More like 30 years. 35.
Oh, 30. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's
an adult child. Yeah. It's such a long time to kind of be on such a restrictive diet. So if you can be kind of working with somebody so that you're getting specific herbs and supplements to actually help to kill off the candida as well as building back up your gut. So things like garlic, oregano oil, has to be given in a very specific kind of way. There's also a thing called undecalonic, I've lost the word now. I'm going to look it up in a second. The supplement that I use is by Thorne. It's called SF722. It's called undecalonic acid. So I've got that totally wrong. That can be really good. You've just got to take heaps of it and do it kind of really short term. The probiotics and prebiotics are really important. So it's about rebuilding your gut health so that your gut, the good bacteria in your gut can actually kill off the bacteria. So the fungal overgrowth that you've got there with that kind of candida. So it's important to look at where that sort of reinfection is continuing to kind of come from. Interestingly, there's also a lot of research with stress and high cortisol and candida, and so, if we're particularly stressed and our cortisol levels are quite high, that can change the pH of your gut, which can then make it more friendly that candida to kind of be there. So I'm assuming over 30 years you've probably done every herb and treatment and kind of whatever. Hopefully you have worked with a practitioner to make sure that you've actually had therapeutic doses of all of these things. There are extreme cases where you actually do have to do well, not have to, but it is actually, well, I would actually advise to do, medical grade antifungals as a short blast kind of treatment, orally, to try to just kind of like kill off and then restart from there. I wouldn't recommend that if it's just something that's kind of been happening here and there for a couple of months or a couple of years. But, when you're talking about 30 years, sometimes it's good to just blast it and kind of start again. I don't say that lightly, but, you've been on a super restricted diet for 30 years. So it's also important to look at things like that can feed fungus and candida. So not only just the starchy sweet foods that can kind of be a problem, but things like, vinegars and mushrooms and any of those kind of fermented foods, which are actually quite good for gut health, can sometimes actually kind of feed candida as well. If you've ever looked at the autoimmune paleo diet, it's definitely not for everybody. It's very restrictive. It's often a kind of really good reset for a short amount of time, which could be months, but obviously less than 30 years. So I'd probably be considering doing something like that at the same time as all of your antifungals and rebuilding the gut.
Awesome. So you said at the start garlic. Do you mean taking garlic as a capsule, or taking garlic pills like that, cloves, or just incorporating everything into cooking? What does that mean?
Depends if you want friends. So, if you want to do it cheap and in isolation and you've got nobody around you, you could probably do the raw cloves. My daughter, our last day in Canada at the beginning of this year, when we were still allowed to travel, which just seems crazy now, she was feeling sick and she wanted to go out when we got back to Sydney. And so she ate a raw clove of garlic and then just vomited for 3 hours because it just hit her gut. And everything stunk. The apartments, it was the worst experience. So some people are fine. Some people are fine with raw garlic hitting their stomach. Others less so. I mean, she's 18. She's not a baby, but others less so. I would be using capsules just because we can get a higher dose coming in more frequently than you can with the raw garlic. But raw garlic is also really good. If you are using raw garlic, what you're wanting to be doing is actually crush the garlic on a chopping board, and you actually want to leave it for at least kind of, a couple of minutes to allow the allicin, which is the active constituent of that, to actually really develop. And that's the same as even if you're cooking, to actually get the most therapeutic benefit out of it, rather than chop, chuck it in the pan, spaghetti's starting to cook. It's squash it, leave it for a couple of minutes, chop it, and then put it in, and you'll get more of those actual active constituents.
I've been doing that lately, actually. But I was just laughing when you were saying, do you want friends? Because when I was in high school, that's when I started getting really into health, and my car constantly smelled like garlic. And I'm slightly older. Well, I got my license before most of my friends, so I was carpooling everyone, and they were like, garlic. I don't know, I was so embarrassed. But it's a particular smell. And sorry to bring it up again, but the Thorn supplement that you couldn't quite remember the name of, what is that?
We'll quickly look at it now.
I haven't heard of it at all, so I don't even know what it is.
So what it is I'm just going to quickly look at it here. Undecalenic acid. It's UNDEC. Oh, hang on, now it's loading. UNDECYLENIC.
Okay.
Now you can see why I can't really say it very well.
And you do the word, and I still don't know how to articulate it.
Undecalenic. Undecalenic, I think it is. Anyway,
I don't say it too often. They can type it out, how to say it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put it in the chat, actually. So with this one, you do need to do quite high doses of it. It comes in stupid tiny capsules, which is a bit annoying, but you do 5 or 10 capsules 2 or 3 times a day, depending on kind of the issue. So what it basically does is it helps the balance of the gut bacteria and is more effective than caprylic acid. So you might have heard of caprylic acid with candida and thrush overgrowth, and this is kind of considered to be I don't know, it's like 5 times more effective or something like that they kind of say. So basically it just helps to kind of help that. It's a fatty acid that helps the balance of the microorganisms that live in the digestive tract and makes it really uncomfortable for candida and fungal infections to be there.
So for someone that has been diagnosed with candida overgrowth or is have all the signs and symptoms that they do, is that something that you would recommend lightly, or is there some reason why it's maybe not the best for everyone, or what's the considerations there?
Yeah, it's pretty safe. So with everything, I mean, look, I hate when people say like, you should check your practitioner to do it, because you're like, I just want to do something, like I'm trying to take control of my health. So if you've got big serious health issues, like do see a practitioner, because things can interfere and maybe some things aren't right for you, or kind of whatever it is. Sorry, it's so dark in here. It's not actually in real life. Oh, there we go. I'll move that a bit closer. But this one, like, you pretty much could, most people could kind of do it. I can't even think of a contraindication off the top of my head. Pregnancy, I wouldn't do it in pregnancy. But really, because it's an oil, there really are very little adverse reactions or contraindications, because there's no proteins in it. So we're normally reacting to proteins when we're reacting to something like plant material. And oils don't interfere with each other. They're not blocked by zinc or iron or anything like that. So it's actually a pretty one that you could kind of do pretty safely for nearly everybody. I don't want to put that out there too much. Would it cause die-off? Everything that's killing off candida and negative kind of gut bacteria can absolutely cause die-off. The SF722, this undecalinic acid, I'm just going to call it that. I put it in the chat so you guys can kind of see it. Is actually really good for gut and vaginal flora. So anything that's kind of gut and vaginal flora based, it is kind of good for. But most things will cause die-off. Now, die-off is basically when the gut bacteria or bad bacteria or bad fungus die. They release these toxins, and that can make you feel pretty ordinary. So whether that's a parasite or whether that's candida, can make you feel tired, can make you feel nauseous. I remember when my daughter had 2 parasites, 2 very common in Australia, called blastocystis hominis and dientamoeba fragilis, really common here. And we were killing them off. We were using myrrh, which is a really strong herb. I remember coming into the kitchen one morning and I was like, who's been using makeup? Who's been using nail polish remover? And they were like, the rib was like, oh, that's my myrrh, mummy. I was like, oh, sorry, darling, drink it up. So that gives you a good idea about what myrrh tastes like. It's full on. It's like paint stripper. If I was a parasite, I'd be gone. And you got to do it 3 times a day, right? The poor kid took a little shot of it to school. Anyway, she had such strong die-off that the teacher would call me. This is not a contagious thing that she had. Teacher would call me and she said, oh, Ruby's asleep on her desk. I'd be like, oh, yeah, just let her go. Just let it. Do you want to pick her up? I said, no, just let her sleep and she'll wake up again. But it was just that die-off that would just be like, this is an energetic kid that, boom, she's asleep on the thing. So it doesn't mean if you do or you don't get die-off, that doesn't actually mean anything particular, right? So you could get die-off, and obviously it makes you feel like a little bit smug and great because you're like, well, I'm actually doing something here. But not getting die-off symptoms doesn't mean it's not dying off. Some people just have better detoxification pathways to actually deal with that kind of toxic load. So depending on your genetics, your liver function and other things, it's like somebody who can smoke until they're 96 and they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is all fine. They just happen to have excellent nicotine detoxification pathways, which is really lucky for them. But it doesn't mean that everybody can most people we know can't get away with that. So to curb the die-off, you can absolutely try to kind of support your liver. So certain amino acids and liver nutrients, things like glycine, methionine, sometimes even glutamine, although I probably wouldn't use it in that kind of instance. You could be using something like N-acetylcysteine or turmeric. All those things help the phase 2 of the liver. So that may help a little bit with the die-off. Even things like chlorophyll, chlorella, spirulina. They'll often help a little bit with that kind of die-off as well. For some people, though, they just get all the feels, and other people don't. But usually it's when phase 2 of the liver isn't working as optimally as it should be. So basically with our liver, when we're detoxifying, we've got 2 phases, phase 1, phase 2. So when we have whatever we're trying to get rid of, it might be alcohol, it might be a hormone, it might be a pesticide, it might be the die-off, the toxic load that these kind of parasites or funguses are releasing. Phase 2 turns that compound, it actually turns it into something that's really more inflammatory and worse than the original compound, right? But that shouldn't be in the body for too long. What should happen is phase 2 should come in straight away, mop it up, make it water soluble, and then it can be excreted by the urinary system or the bowels. If you don't have adequate phase 1 and phase 2 matching up, then what happens is that phase 1 turns it into this second compound. But if phase 2 is a bit slow, we end up getting more of these inflammatory things coming on. So when people say, I've done a detox and my legs are sore, I'm getting heaps of headaches, or my whole body's aching, or I can't get out of bed, then it's always like you probably don't have an adequate kind of phase 2. And a good way to explain it is, when you're at the supermarket, if the person at the checkout can't load the groceries, but the conveyor belt's just building up more groceries. It's like you've got to have this kind of like one on, one off approach to phase 1 and phase 2 of the liver. So it's important to support phase 2 if you can.
Excellent.
Awesome. So how would you support? Sorry, one more time. How would you support the phase 2 if someone's they're really struggling with that die-off?
Yeah, so it could be turmeric, it could be N-acetylcysteine. You could also do like a broccoli sprout powder, chlorella, spirulina, chlorophyll. All those things will help, and some sort of certain amino acids to help the liver as well. So glycine, methionine, they'll also help to kind of get that phase 2 kind of working.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. We know you can talk fast, so we've figured.
Sorry. I'll slow down.
No. That's a good thing.
Good.
Because I've got a few questions. And what's the hard cutoff time?
Well, Linda has a patient at 11:15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go. So Amanda. I'm seeing a naturopath for gut and skin issues. She tells me that smelly farts is a bad thing.
Sorry.
She's trying to heal my gut so this does not occur. So far, nothing is really working. Are smelly farts really a sign of poor gut health? I also sometimes still get some bloating. How do I heal from this? I'm on a GI fortified powder as well as magnesium, HCI, zinc, B vitamins, and vitamin D.
Right. Okay. So yes and no. Okay. So your naturopath probably knows you better than me, right? Because I don't know you. So, it is always good to kind of have some trust with the person that you're working with. Certainly, food intolerances, or when we don't break down the food very well, can cause bad smelly gas, particularly things like gluten and dairy often are a problem with that. Sometimes other though, like fibrous plant-rich foods can actually create kind of smelly gas, like if you've had something, like if you don't break certain foods down very well, like it might be like broccoli or garlic and things like that. Some people will get sort of like a smelly smell from that. So a kind of like a pooey smell is okay, but if it's something that you kind of like, well, it's a little bit offensive, or, it smells a bit sulfury or a bit like ammonia-y, or, where you're just like, well, that was like, what happened there kind of thing, then it probably is that you are intolerant to a food that you're eating, or it may be that you don't have the right balance of that gut bacteria. Now, if you're currently working on this, it could also be constipation, right? So people are constipated all the time. Even people who have a bowel movement daily can often still be constipated. And it's harder to identify that in adults. It's very easy in children. So for example, the child has, say an 8-year-old has smelly gas, or they look a little bit distended, or sometimes they say their tummy hurts. You might take them to the doctor and they ask you some questions. they do a bowel movement every day. Yes, they do. Never had a problem. Okay, interesting. Let's just get an x-ray of their stomach and just check if there's nothing wrong. And they say, whoa, there is so much fecal compaction here. And the mum and dad, because I'm sure they're both there, are saying, sorry, that was me. It just feels like it's always the mum, but I'm sure they're both there. And thanks to all the dads throughout there. So, so they'll say no, but like this child like has a poo like all the time, like never had a problem, no issues. But then obviously it's not enough for what they should be doing. And the question is, people then say, well, how much should it be? How many poos should I be doing a day? Like, how big should they be? I don't know. It's different for everybody. Nobody knows. So, if you have incomplete gastric emptying, you might have fecal compaction there from like a long time that could be then essentially like rotting and creating this kind of smelly gas. So it is really important to make sure that your bowel is kind of completely emptied, and that you're going, that you're doing like a really good kind of like clear out as a short-term kind of thing. And it might be using something like aloe vera juice. You might be using something like magnesium oxide, which basically draws water into the bowel and makes you go. So these are things for long-term use. There's also things like hydrolyzed guar gum that helps everything kind of move along. So, it could be that you do a few weeks or whatever of that to kind of reset. Now, going back to the case of the child, what a doctor would say is to use what we call in Australia Movicol, which is kind of like it's not a laxative, but it's kind of like a stool softener and bulker. But it's basically, for intents and purposes, makes you poo. And they will say, give the child that every day for 6 months. So clearing out, compacted feces isn't just a matter of doing a couple of big poos or, having some more regular bowels. It takes quite a while to build, to remove that. And that's in an 8-year-old. Right? So then you try to kind of put that into a 40-year-old and it can make a bigger difference. So it might be that you have some compacted feces there. It might be that there's food intolerance that you still haven't identified, but it also might be that the process of what you're doing of actually trying to support healthy gut bacteria with prebiotics and probiotics and a really healthy diet just takes a long time. And the thing with gut is that it's not that easy to just switch over your gut bacteria. Oh, I took some probiotics. I'm not saying this is what you did, the person who's asking the questions, but like a lot of people like, oh no, but I'm doing probiotics and like I'm eating some like kefir, like I'm trying to cut down on sugar, like surely my gut's heaps better by now. And like it just takes a really long time to actually change your gut bacteria. So in that person's particular case, if you're not getting any change in any of the symptoms, then maybe you guys are working on something that's not really working. But if you're finding, do you know what, I am 20% less bloated than I was before. I now don't get that funny stabbing pain after I eat whatever. I have identified that dairy really does not make me feel great. So I've cut that out for the last month. As long as you're moving in that sort of upward trajectory, you're probably on the right track. And unfortunately for you, the smelly gas, unfortunately, might be the last thing to go. It would be, if you're not getting any changes in anything, that you might be looking at changing up what you're doing with your naturopath.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Does that kind of make sense? Or it's probably a long answer to a short question.
That was great. And I think the way that you're answering all these questions is really helpful for everyone listening. It's not just for that particular question. So thank you so much. Okay.
Just tell me to shut up if you're done with the questions. Give me that.
Hey, Belinda.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So we actually have a couple of questions here, and one just came through in the chat and somebody else asked the same thing. So we'll do that. How long does it generally take to heal gut lining? Or and someone else has said, how long should it take to heal a leaky gut? So yeah, same thing.
Okay. Yeah. Did someone else say how long is a piece of string? Okay. So it's a really difficult question to answer, and it's very, very, very specific to you individually. Now, if you're, for example, you've had parasites or you've had candida, or you're back to the first question we answered about somebody who'd had gut issues for 30 years, it's going to take years basically to kind of get to that point. If you're somebody who has sort of recently noticed that like you had been getting bloating over the last kind of like couple of months, maybe 6 months, and maybe your bowels have been a bit irregular and you're getting a bit of acid reflux, and it had only been sort of recent, it's going to kind of take a shorter amount of time. As a general rule of thumb, they normally say that however long you've had the issue for, usually takes twice as long to correct it. Now that's sad, because most of the time, by the time we've worked out our gut health, we realize we probably had it for years, right? So I'm not saying it's going to take many, many years to kind of correct it. I would say that most people on a general basis should start to notice improvements within the first couple of months, right? Whenever I get a gut patient, I'm always like, oh, yay. Because I would pretty much be able to, not guarantee, but I would be fairly certain that by the next time they came back to me, which would probably be in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, they would be feeling a certain percent better. Now, whether that was 20% or 80% depends on what's happening, but it would be pretty rare for them to not be getting an improvement kind of pretty quickly. But the whole sort of gut healing thing, in terms of if you've had a childhood full of antibiotics, in your 20s, you just ate pizza and drank beer and had a good time, and then you had a very, very stressful 30s and you maybe relied a bit more on takeaway food and you had lots of work meals out and, that sort of, life, but maybe not just pizza and beer. And then in your 40s, you're like, yeah, got some gut stuff. That happens a lot, right? It's going to take a little bit longer to actually really, really heal the underlying stuff. I would assume that we could get you feeling, oh, that's you, Julia. Yeah, that's everybody. That's why there's so many people. Hope your 20s were fun though. If you're just like, oh, I've noticed like I am a bit bloated and maybe my bowels are a bit inconsistent, and that's all the issue that you feel like you have, then, we're going to be able to just make smaller changes and, you're probably going to start to kind of feel good pretty soon. If you're like, do you know what? And actually I've had sort of like IBS, which basically just means you've had gut issues for a long time and it's nothing else. Yeah. Oh, don't be dismayed, Catherine. No, you won't be dead and buried. No, it's definitely not. All I'm saying is it's not going to take double as long. I'm just saying it's not just like 3 months of probiotics and you're going to kind of be better. I think the thing too is that, we don't also need to be perfect. So sometimes when people come to me and they say, nothing's really wrong with me, I just want to get a gut test done to see where I'm at, right? And I say, well, what do you want to achieve from this, okay? Because it's expensive to get a gut test done, and then if you actually want to do the work to fix up what you're going to find, like that's going to be expensive and time consuming. You have to change your diet. You might get some negative symptoms, so yes, for our long-term health and wellness, we should absolutely be looking after our gut. But we also, from my point of view, and everybody's different, I also don't believe that we have to get everything perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like, that all the numbers have to kind of like add up. Maybe I do just have a lower level of lactobacillus than the reference range, but maybe I'm okay with that. So, if you're not symptomatic at all, then what's not broke, I don't know, like, do you really need to fix it? I would say probably not. And the same thing with a lot of these parasites. So I mentioned the 2 that my daughter had. Now, they're very, very common in Australia. And if people are symptomatic, yes, they should be fixed up and gotten rid of and heal their gut. But there's also people like, say, for example, Sarah had the parasite and was symptomatic, and then somebody might say, well, Matt, you should get tested too because you might have it because you guys are living together and all that stuff. And I would say to you, if you're not at all symptomatic and you feel good, just leave it, because, obviously different types of parasites would be different, but the ones that I'm talking about, some people will actually have those parasites there and their bodies can actually deal with it. It's no problem. Like, for example, somebody has the herpes virus in their blood but never gets a cold sore, right? So I've had cold sores. I don't get them often, but I sometimes get them. My partner never gets them, right? But he will have the antibodies in his blood because, I've kissed him basically. But his body and his immune system is able to kind of cope with that being there, and it never, ever, ever presented with anything. So, so we also have to kind of, I guess, trust the wisdom of our bodies a little bit. But at the same time, sort of looking after ourselves. So it was a very long question that didn't actually answer how long it would take each of you individually to heal your guts. But I think if you're symptomatic, you want to keep working on it until you can get to it as good as you can. And then it might be that you're like, okay, like this is good. I'm happy with this diet. I'm going to keep these couple of gut supportive things in there to keep it, sort of balanced. But don't feel like you've got to wait until the gut test is absolutely perfect if you feel good. That's just my point of view though.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. We have Courtney. There's 2 questions here from Courtney. Courtney, tell us which question you would like prioritized to be answered, and we'll come back to one of these. And then in the meantime, Marie says, Dear Belinda, thank you for your time today. I've had an amazing journey of learning about my gut, from severe dysbiosis, especially after 2 years of doing natural bodybuilding, only eating chicken and broccoli, not able to digest my foods, to eating well now, only plant-based with lots of variety, lots of energy. I found I am sensitive to gluten and dairy. The only thing I can't seem to improve is having outbreaks on my skin, only on my chin. If I would accidentally eat dairy, it's even worse. I've never had this before. I realize this is probably hormonal. I'm 44 years old. Anything else I could do or try? I'm supplementing with vitamin D, zinc, and glutamine. Thank you so much.
Right, good question. Unfortunately, the people who've done those bodybuilding comps are a steady source of patients. So, for those of you who haven't done it yet, maybe don't, but good on you for doing it, because it is it's a huge thing that you've managed to kind of like achieve. But unfortunately, something that feels very good and healthy for your body usually does end up with kind of ramifications, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how long you've been plant-based for, or whether you're 100% plant-based or not, but it may be, and this is obviously, I don't know you, so this is a consideration. It may be that you're actually not getting enough protein now. You probably had quite a lot in the past, but if you're not getting enough protein, then you don't have enough of the building blocks to rebuild all of your cells and all of your body. And a lot of the time people will find after they've been plant-based for a couple of years, they do end up kind of getting more breakouts. So I would encourage you to calculate your protein, probably similar how you've done before. You probably know how to do it because of that. So you need to be getting at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you weigh 70 kilos, you need to be getting 70 grams of pure protein. So that can be quite hard to get on a plant-based diet. For example, a cup of legumes is around about 10 grams of protein. 5 tablespoons of chia seeds is around 10 grams of protein. And you would need 70 if you were 70 kilos. There's a lot there. It may be that you want to supplement with a plant-based protein powder, just to give yourself an extra 20 or 30 grams in the day. The other thing is that spearmint tea is fantastic at reducing excess testosterone and androgens. So studies have shown that just 2 cups a day of spearmint tea can definitely help with that. And it may be that in this kind of, I don't want to use the word perimenopausal, but perimenopausal time, which all of us in our 40s are at to some extent, sometimes we do actually become slightly testosterone dominant. The zinc that you're taking should absolutely be helping with that, but it may be that the spearmint tea is also useful. The other thing to look at is, are you getting enough essential fatty acids or fish oils? Well, not fish oils because you're plant-based, but like essential fatty acids, omega-3s I meant, sorry. And the other thing to kind of consider is has your cycle changed, and are they kind of happening cyclically? If you're not strictly plant-based, I'd say probably even adding in a collagen powder might be kind of useful. If you are, don't worry about it. And it may be that even short term, you just want to do some vitamin A orally, which is often also lacking in a plant-based diet, but really important to actually break down the bacteria and the sort of the, call it mucus, but the sebaceous glands. It helps to kind of reduce that, so that might help as well.
Great insight. Thank you. And congratulations to Marie for having so much progress in your health already. I think with some of those tips, we'll get on top of the chin acne, but that's really exciting overall. Awesome.
Oh, Marie said thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Marie. So I'm losing track of where the question is.
Okay. So this question from Courtney, she says, next week I will be removing my Kylena IUD that has been in for over 2 years. What are some of the suggestions for preparing my body for the changing hormones and to detox afterwards? I suspect I have PCOS. Supplementing with vitamin B complex, liposomal, vitamin C, zinc, chasteberry, and magnesium, and altering lifestyle and foods to support glutathione and D-glucarate.
You're all over it, honey. You're on the right track. If that's, I'm assuming that that is a hormonally based IUD, that Kylena, did you say?
Levonorgestrel.
Oh yeah, okay, yep. So that's like the same as the Marina in Australia. So you ideally wouldn't already be on the chase tree if you are still on that, because it's going to interfere. So I would personally probably wait at least a month from coming off the IUD to bring the chase tree or the Vitex in, which can help to then sort of regulate your cycles. It's absolutely about sort of just supporting your liver and detoxification pathways. So I think you mentioned the glutathione. You've got zinc in there, which really helps to kind of balance. I'd probably consider doing some fish oils if you're not opposed to fish oils. It may be that, I guess when you say maybe you have PCOS, I'm assuming that means you already thought you had PCOS before you went onto the IUD. It really shouldn't be tested for until you've had at least 3 months or 3 cycles off the IUD, just to give your body to kind of come back into balance. Everybody's ovaries will look kind of polycystic or multifollicular when they come off of these hormonal kind of contraceptives. You just got to give your body a little bit of time to kind of clear that out. So if you had PCOS symptoms before you had the IUD, then yes, most likely it probably has just put a bit of a Band-Aid on it and brought it out to kind of stop it. If you didn't though, or you had a very different diet and lifestyle back then, you could come out the other side and it'd be totally different. So making sure that you're exercising, some resistance exercise a few times a week is really important for PCOS. If it is PCOS like you thought you'd had it before, then high testosterone is usually an issue. You could go back to you've got zinc, and you could do the spearmint tea as well, spearmint for all. If you think there may be some insulin resistance there, which is usually the case again with PCOS, I would try to keep the sugars and the starchy stuff low and really kind of supporting your body with quality proteins and heaps of kind of vegetables, particularly things like broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, cabbage, fennel, Brussels sprouts, kale and spinach, did I say those, are all members of the brassica family, which helps to kind of detoxify yourself from some of that estrogen or estrogen-like compound that you were getting on the Marina. But it sounds like you're on the right track. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Belinda and Courtney. Let us know how you go. Keep us posted with that journey. Okay, so this question comes from Susan. This one was emailed in. She has questions about what to eat. So she has a hard time. She has a lot of food sensitivity. So particularly with fiber, and she knows how good it is for her, but she has a hard time trying to bring it in. Her gastro actually told her to eat really plain foods like white bread, pasta, bland foods, nothing with fiber. And obviously she knows that long term that's not a good idea. So she's a bit at a loss of where to start and what she can maintain. And what would you recommend to someone like her that's just super sensitive but wants to be able to eat well?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I'm not sure whether you have like diverticulitis or you have like Crohn's disease or diverticulitis. Okay, so with diverticulitis, it's just about, they always tell you to eat those like smushy, white bready foods and stuff like that, which look, won't flare up the diverticulitis because you're not getting fiber. So the type of fiber that you really need to, that most people with diverticulitis, I should say, I don't know your particular situation, should avoid would be the more fibrous fibers. So things like, you know, crunchy nuts and seeds and crunchy apples. The recommendation that I would make is that you just cook most of your foods. I'm guessing you're probably in the States and it's like beautiful summer there, but like, sorry, just pretend it's winter and you're here and it's raining outside. You want to have soup. So things that are well cooked. So there's a reason that cows have 4 stomachs to digest grass, right? Like plant food can be hard to digest. So those types of fibers, you know, like rocket salad and crunchy nuts and seeds and things are great for somebody when their digestive system is functioning well. But for those of you who have bloating or, you know, bowel issues or discomfort, stabbing pains, diverticulitis, what we want to do is to change the fiber to be a softer type of fiber. So if you can be cooking foods more so that they're a little bit what we call pre-digested, that sounds gross, but you know what I mean. So well-steamed vegetables, roasted vegetables, soups, casseroles, most people will actually be able to get away with that degree of fiber as long as it's just slowed down and it's cooked rather than having it kind of too crunchy. So think about what you'd feed like a 1 or a 2-year-old, I guess. So it doesn't have to be puree, but you might like go, look, I'm just going to stew you some apple and take the skin off it. Or I'm going to peel a pear and give you a few bits of the pear, or peel a cucumber, you know. So whilst to most of it, that feels like you're taking the healthy part off, you know, in actual fact, you're just taking a little bit of the fiber out. But then if you do things like soups and casseroles where you've got the whole plant in there, but it's fully like soft and digested, that's better. If you are wanting to introduce nuts and seeds and things, very, very small amounts of like nut butters, like really smooth almond butter, you'd probably get away with that because it's not going to get stuck in the diverticula.
Great.
Start slow. So if you've been on that white bread diet, you know, you need to bring in things slowly. Otherwise you will have problems. You know, like when you change the dog's food, you know, something bad happens. You know, we don't want to ever increase or decrease the amount of fiber in our diet by more than about 10% a day. Now, don't have to count it, but if you are having all the white bread stuff, maybe just bring in 1 vegetable soup, you know, a small cup of vegetable soup as one meal with what you're having, and then see how that goes for a couple of days, and then just slowly bring those things in. Don't just go from white bread and white rice to, you know, like almond butter and a chicken soup and a roasted vegetables kind of thing. Just start slow.
Is that because the microbiome just needs time to adjust? And, you know, like, what is the reason for that specifically?
Yeah. So part of it is that your microbiome needs time to adjust, and part of it is just that your gut just takes a little bit of time to just kind of establish itself to be able to kind of bring in the right amount of kind of water and have the right type of what we call peristalsis or muscle contraction to actually kind of move it all through.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. So this next question comes from Hona. So it's, hi, Sarah or Matt. I've been taking digestive enzymes.
That was awkward.
Yeah. I've been taking digestive enzymes for 6 months now and have recently learned that I can't digest lipase, a fat enzyme, which explains why I can't eat avocados without having stomach pain and diarrhea. So I'm on a different digestive enzyme, which now helps digest pretty much everything, and without it, I get bloated and have stomach pain. I want to get off these enzymes, but my naturopath says my lack of enzymes is mostly due to stress, which I'm working on. I also can't taste salt and feel like that I'm over salting my food and drinking 5 liters of water daily, which has gone down from 7 liters. Why is this happening? What can I do to help improve my symptoms?
I think your naturopath is right in the sense that, you know, if you aren't producing enough lipase, you are going to need to supplement it back in, right? So like somebody with a lactose intolerance just can't have lactose, or they add some lactase, which is like a little enzyme to help them digest it. Whereas obviously it's much easier to cut out dairy and be like, oh, I'm lactose intolerant, rather than like, oh, I'm lipase intolerant, so I'm never going to eat fats again. Like that's not really a healthy possibility. It's also a bit sad and untasty as well. So, you know, I would say don't feel bad about continuing the enzyme. It's just giving your body that little bit of support that it doesn't have at the moment. Some people like lactose intolerance, you know, they lack the lactase enzyme, basically. So, you know, yes, it can be from stress, absolutely, but it may also be that your body doesn't produce the right amount of it in which case it might be something that you are actually supplementing with more longer term. I mean, I hope not, because you obviously want to get off it, but try not to feel too bad about being on it. It's not like you're on a medication or something like that. It's just a little bit of extra sort of body support. While you work on the stress and the whole digestive stuff at the same time. With the water thing, I mean, I would double check your kidney function. I would double check your adrenal glands. So you want to check your cortisol and aldosterone function via a blood test through your naturopath or GP, because it may be that, you're getting the wrong water, salt kind of indicators, coming up, and that you are, 7 litres, 5 litres, unless you weigh quite a lot, then that's way too much water. And you are going to be also diluting your digestive enzymes, which is going to make it harder for you to be breaking down kind of other foods. In the interim, while you're getting those things checked, because, if you do have an adrenal dysfunction issue, and if you've had chronic stress, who knows, maybe you do, maybe you don't, that does make you crave more salt. Certainly zinc deficiency as well often makes people crave more sugar and more salt. So it may be that, you actually do need to address a potential zinc deficiency if one's there and it's indicated. I would, though, in the meantime, either not salt your food, or, if you're not eating processed food, which would mean you're not getting much salt in your diet, put out the amount that you're going to have for a day. It might be half a teaspoon or whatever it is into a little ramekin or egg cup at the beginning of the day, and just use that amount of salt on your food. If you're eating breakfast cereals and crackers and breads that are already salted, then you might be better off just not actually adding the salt to the food and trying to get a bit more taste in food in other ways, whether it's chili or garlic, or fresh herbs, basil, those sorts of things might help to create a bit more, some pesto or something might create a bit more taste in your food, so that you're not needing to kind of have as much salt, and then actually sort of start to calculate how much water you're getting. Because in the absence of any medical condition or adrenal problem or kidney problem, some of us overeat, some of us undereat, some of us overdrink, some of us underdrink, and it often is just a training our body back to the right amounts. So it might be that, you work out how much you need to be having. The intake for water that we need is around about 30 mils per kilogram of body weight. Sorry, guys, working in pounds, you'll have to get the Google calculator out. So say, for example, you weigh 70 kilos, you would be needing about 2.1 litres of water a day. If you're exercising, you need a little bit more on top of that. But, you might work out, okay, like 3 litres of water is the right amount for me. I'm going to have half a teaspoon of salt per day, measure it out, and just make sure you have it, and just see how your body goes being sort of regulated like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay,
Excellent.
great. Thank you. So what do you think are the problem, what could be the issue with taking enzymes long term?
Not much, really. Your body tends to depending on what enzymes you're taking, but like when you're taking digestive enzymes and things, it doesn't happen very often that when you stop taking them, your body stops making them. Like a lot of things, when you start replacing, like say you're replacing hormones, your body can kind of shut down in that kind of production. Usually with enzymes, your body will still create them, but you're adding into them as well. So it doesn't usually shut down the production of the enzymes in most people. So I wouldn't really be concerned about taking them longer term. I'm assuming what the person, sorry, I forgot your name. Sorry, what was it?
Hona.
I'm presuming what she just wants to get her body working properly is probably more the thing, I'm assuming, rather than just not wanting to take them. It's like everyone else's body's producing this stuff, like, can mine do it too?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that if it is sort of stress-based, yes, it probably can, but there is also that potential, like somebody who lacks the lactase enzyme, you may lack the lipase enzyme, and that is something that can be developed later on. As we know with lactase, people say, I drank milk all the way through, and as soon as I was like 30, all of a sudden if I drink milk, I'm super bloated and I run to the toilet 15 times. They've developed a lactase or lactose intolerance. So It's not something that you have to kind of have been born with, but it could be something that has developed. I'm just saying worst case scenario, you know, but, you know, obviously we all want our bodies to be able to do the job that they're meant to be doing on their own, if they can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Belinda. This has been fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I am. Okay, so Lorraine says, what causes floating stools? Is this a problem? I can get them periodically, including today.
Yeah. Oh, what? That was a good question to come up. It happened today. So basically, usually floating stools may be, there's a couple of things. It may be an indication of fat malabsorption. So if you're not actually digesting the fats properly, you might be getting more fats coming into your stools, and that makes them float like oil, like rises to the top of water. It can also be, though, sometimes when people have a super fibrous diet, so which isn't a bad thing, sometimes that can make the stools float as well. So it's not always a bad thing. If it's happening periodically, it may be that sometimes you're not absorbing fats particularly well, or maybe if you have had a higher fat meal. I guess it's if you're getting other symptoms alongside that or not. You know, so if literally once a month you have a floating stool and that's it, yeah, don't worry about it. If it's something that's happening regularly and you're also getting some bloating, or you feel a little bit nauseous after you eat nuts or something like that, you know, you might find that, you know, there is more of that sort of fat intolerance kind of happening.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. So Catherine says, my understanding is that food allergy tests would show me as being allergic to just about everything if I have a leaky gut, as I suspect. As such, are food allergy tests like Elisa or wheat zoom actually useful now? Would such tests be useful once the leaky gut heals? And do I know if when my leaky gut has been actually healed?
That's the question that we
Oh, okay, so yes, they're useful. What you're talking about is a food intolerance panel, not a food allergy test. So an allergy is more like a proper like allergic response, whereas intolerances can kind of grow and change. Now, when people come up with all the foods on the intolerable, a lot of foods on the intolerance test, it's always a very sad day for them. When I see them come through, I'm like, oh, this is going to be hard, because that person is like, you know, what you're hoping for is like one or two foods that you're super intolerant to, that you eat quite regularly but don't even like that much, and it's easy to kind of cut them out and you feel better. That's always what we're going for. You know, like oh, apples. Wow, I was eating an apple a day, but I don't really care if I turn that into a pear, and I can get rid of apples, and wow, I feel amazing. When it comes up with everything, yes, it's a sign of leaky gut. So basically just, you know, your immune system's overreacting to these foods because they're not being broken down properly. In my opinion, it's not a good idea for you to do another one and waste. I mean, here they're like $300, which would be sort of like 200 American. So it's a lot of money. I don't know whether you guys have it cheaper or not. Probably. That's how it goes. Or maybe not, who knows. But, you know, so it's something that I wouldn't recommend that my patients did again until they felt their gut was good. So I guess then coming back to your question now about when do I know it's better makes a little bit more sense, because I would be trying, like if you're feeling like you're having a good bowel movement a day, you're not bloated, you're not gassy. I mean, you might sometimes be, right? Like this, like, but like at a normal, manageable kind of level. But if most of the time you're feeling pretty good, I would trial some of those foods first and see how you kind of feel when you eat those foods. And then when you're eating more freely and you're fairly asymptomatic, then I would assume your gut has probably mostly healed. And then you could do the food intolerance panel again, because you might find out, oh, it's actually just almonds and eggs that I'm intolerant to now, and everything else kind of has improved. But when you do those food intolerance panels, you need to have been eating fairly freely for at least a few weeks or a month beforehand, because if you've been avoiding all those foods, or avoiding even one particular food, maybe gluten or eggs or dairy, you won't come up as positive on that, because your body isn't actually making a current immune reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I know it's getting, we're about to wrap up soon. I'm just curious, you still take patients? Are you taking any patients? I know you're very busy and you're very, very, very busy.
No, I am taking new patients. Yeah. And I think that one of the great things, I've always done Skype and FaceTime and online and all that kind of stuff, is I think I've actually had a lot more international patients with COVID, because I feel like everyone realizes that the whole world's opened up now. Like I've always had international patients. It was always the case, but I think with everything now, so much is online. Everyone's kind of gone, oh, I can see whatever doctor I want or whatever naturopath I want or whatever, because you don't actually, we're realizing now you can actually do a lot online.
Yeah, cool. Well,
yes, I am. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, I think obviously anyone that's on the call, it's so good, like in your experience and everything. And the way that you communicate, I think, is so important working with a functional medical practitioner, that they can be super smart, but if they're not actually conveying what you need to do or give you that roadmap to success, I think that's also part of the huge battle. So I think that's one of your also, your massive as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, so if anyone's interested, what's the best way to book an appointment with you?
So, I mean, I do have a phone number. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna look it up. I'll put it on there. Otherwise,
more than that.
Well,
otherwise, I never call myself. I'm gonna put it up. So this is obviously an Australian number. So you don't have to call. I'm gonna give you another option as well. 290. It's so funny. I never call myself, do I? So, with mobile phones now, you can do that. Otherwise, you can just contact me via my website, which I'll put up there as well, and shoot me an email. And often with my international clients, we just work with it by email because, it's tricky to kind of like find the times and get them right. So, there's always times. We just have to kind of make sure that they fit right. So yeah, you can always shoot me an email if it's difficult to call, or if it's international, whichever works.
Awesome. So if anyone is listening to the replay now and can't see the chat, where you access this video from, the replay, if you scroll down a little bit, Belinda's links are all there. So awesome. So we have a couple more questions. So in the next 5 or so minutes, Belinda, I won't make you late for your next.
Okay, it's all right.
Okay, this question comes from Kaylee. She says, there were 2 follicular cysts on my sacral MRI last week. One on the left measuring, they're about 2 by 2, and both of them are about 2 by 2 centimeters. Do you think these could be contributing to my low back pain? I have ankylosing spondylitis and autoimmune reactive arthritis. Wondering if I should do anything about these cysts. Pain is my main concern. I'm not trying to get pregnant. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Yep. So follicular cysts are fairly normal types of cysts. So they basically, they sort of come up in that follicular phase of the cycle, which is the beginning of the cycle, the first half of the cycle. And so most of them will actually resolve, by the end of that cycle, or certainly within a couple of cycles. So most people would say that they probably, who knows, but they probably wouldn't be causing the problems and the pain. However, if they've been there for quite a while and they weren't actually resolving between cycles, then it's a possible kind of contributor. My recommendation would be that you wait probably 2 cycles and then see if they're gone. Quite often they will be gone if they're just a simple follicular cyst, as opposed to being a different type of cyst. But if they call them follicular cysts, then most likely they will resolve. If they haven't, then yes, they could be kind of contributing to the pain. The other thing too, I guess, if you do have, and I'm sorry, you've got ankylosing spondylitis, and what was the other one? Something else? Rheumatoid?
No, she just said.
Not just ankylosing spondylitis. Not just, but like.
Reactive arthritis.
Oh, what do you mean reactive? Yeah. So there is that whole kind of inflammatory condition that's happening, and periods and ovulation are by nature inflammatory events. So when we get that kind of localized inflammation there, which a lot of people won't even feel as pain, for those people with already heightened inflammation and pain, it can kind of make that sort of process worse. So absolutely gluten-free for you, if that's okay. I'd be looking at high-dose fish oils, high-dose turmeric, vitamin D, and hopefully those things will start to kind of improve the pain a little bit. I'm sure you're already kind of doing lots of stuff. It's just trying to get the doses right. That's the most important thing. And yeah, then just see if that kind of one has resolved or not.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to let you go, but
Yes.
it's been such a great call, and don't forget everyone to get a sample chapter of your book. If you either get I think they should be getting a book, but I saw a notice on your website there was a free sample.
Oh yeah, I was like, "Where's the sample?" Oh yeah, on my website. Yeah, you can get it on my website, and then you can order the book through Amazon as well. So it's just a cheaper way of getting the postage is always cheaper on Amazon.
Yeah.
So that's called Healthy Hormones, and it's fantastic, and it's beautifully designed and very aesthetic, and thank you so much to Belinda for your time today. If you enjoyed the call today, please let us know in the chat. And if you're still looking for a functional practitioner, definitely swing Belinda a line. I know, Deepika, you're looking for someone, and Deepika's in Singapore, so that is a much better time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, so Courtney said, thank you so much. Great chat as always. Took so many notes. I wish I took notes. I listen to this recording and actually write it down. Julie said, appreciate it. I love uppercase.
Thank you guys. You guys are so sweet. You've made my day.
Good. You've made our day. Thanks for making us laugh. These aren't usually this fun. Sorry. Sorry, she said.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. No, you've got to keep it a bit light. You know, like health can get so bogged down in the detail, the numbers, making everything perfect. And it's like sometimes when we're over focusing on things, it just makes us, we know that stress interferes with all of our symptoms and things, but we don't want to be stressed about being stressed, So it's about doing what we can to improve things and sort of not accepting that and letting it go, but you got to have a little bit of balance and lightness with it as well.
Yeah, that's all right. That's right. I'm going to just copy and paste your details in one more time. Deepika, quickly copy the number down before we close the call. But I'll put it on the website as well.
Yeah, and otherwise it's just my website is just belindakirkpatrick.com.au, and all the number and email and all that stuff's on there anyway. So yeah, I'm not unfindable. I have to Google my own anyway. So you guys can Google it too.
Awesome. And Julia.
Thanks, Julia. You're a sweetheart. Thank you for ordering the book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day, Belinda, and have a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Middle of the night, whatever it is.
Have a great one. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.